Hello and welcome to my Restoration Druid guide for The War Within Season 2. A lot has happened to Restoration Druids since Season 1. We received an update to how Mastery works, which now has diminishing returns based on how many hots the Druid has on a target. And we also got new PvP talents that we can work with, and an overall rework of the Druid class tree. All this combined requires some new theory crafting, and new strategies need to be developed for Restoration Druid specifically. So I think it's worth for me to give you guys an update on what's going on and how the class feels right now. So what are the strengths of Restoration Druids this patch? Well, this patch, Restoration Druids are quite versatile as a healer. They can function with melee cleaves, they can function with spell cleaves, changing up talents on the class tree, and they can function with a combination of both. So for example, a good example is Warlock Windwalker, Affliction Assassination. There are quite a lot of comps with one melee and one ranged where Restoration Druid fits perfectly. It all comes down to number tuning, but for now it's worth noting that Restoration Druid has never been more versatile in terms of how many comps it can run. We can also shift incoming polymorph effects on us. That's another quite good strength of druids in general. And we can also avoid being slowed most of the games. Just because every time you shift in and out of forms, you remove every root and slow effect on yourself. So we are probably one of the most mobile healers in the game. This is useful both for BG Blitz and Arena. The fact that we can use HOTS to keep our teammates alive also means that we are one of the healers that more easily go for drinks, because you can fully HOT a teammate, then go behind a pillar and drink while HOTS are still ticking without you being in combat. That is especially useful when you play with spell cleaves. And what are the weaknesses of Restoration Druid? Well, the most glaring weakness right now is the fact that we are very weak to purge effects. If we are facing a comp that heavily purges, we will struggle a lot to keep our teammates alive. One clear example is any comp with a Devastation Evoker, plus a Priest and plus a Hunter, for example. Because all three classes can purge, and we will have a very difficult time to keep our teammates alive. One other clear example that I've seen is Double Dragon plus a melee. That is extremely hard to heal as a Restoration Druid, and you will have to just accept the fact that that's a counter comp, and there's nothing you can do really other than maximize your globals to keep HOTS up as much as you can in between purges. One other glaring issue that Restoration Druids right now have is the fact that if you are not perfect with your positioning, you are extremely weak to being swapped to, because we are very squishy as a healer. So good positioning is key on Restoration Druid in order to benefit the most from your utility, because you have tools to deal with being trained. You can shift in your travel and then bear form, go behind pillars so that the enemy team does not have a chance to touch you. But in order to do that, you need to be in a good positioning, meaning close to a pillar, like 20 yards from the fight or more, so that the enemy team has a difficult time to swap to you. They need to commit CC to go you with like a stun, but in a stun you can press skin or you can trinket, but whenever you are free you need to be able to kite if they are still trying to kill you. And shifting is really good when you are close to a pillar. Outside of a pillar, shifting is not nearly as strong because the enemy can instantly slow you, they can root charge you, they can do damage a lot easier when you are in the open. So you need to be mindful of this as a restoration druid. In this patch we also have another tool to immune CC and to be able to do a lot of healing, which is Ancient of Lore, but we'll get to that later. You just need to know that whenever you don't have this and you are in the open, you are vulnerable to being trained. So you need to always keep that in mind when you play Restoration Druid in Arena, so that you don't expose yourself to being trained. So for add-ons, I use some for all my healers. The first one, as I said in the Evoker guide, is S Arena, or the alternative would be Glaudius, which I use to track for enemy DRs. Then I use OmniCD to track my teammates' defensive cooldowns and more. Then I use Omni Auras to see on my right frame when my teammate is using a defensive cooldown, on my healing frames basically, which are right here. And I also use this so that I can see whenever I am CCing an opponent on the nameplates, or when my team is CCing an opponent. This is especially useful for BG Blitz, but also in Arena. If you are not used to track the CC on the Arena frames, you can also do it on the nameplates. If you can see, this is highlighted by Omni Auras, and it's the same for every single CC. Then I also use weak auras to customize what I see on my screen. I will get to that in a second. Other important things are Omni bars, which I use to track important cooldowns from the enemy. So in this case I track three different bars, three different types of things. On the left I have defensives from the enemy. On the first bar I have interrupts and things that are used to stop my clones. And on the third bar, which is the bottom, in the bottom center, I track important crowd control that can happen on me, so that I need to look out for. Because when I know that this crowd control is on cooldown, I can safely push in for clones. That's the best way of playing Druid safely. You track every single CC that is available to the enemy, and when it's down you can safely push in for clones without having to worry about being swapped to, for example. Weak auras, I use it for quite a few different things for Restoration Druid. One of the most important ones, and shout out to Gizmo, he creates weak auras for Restoration Druid on the skill capped Discord. I use this to track when I have a healing over time effect empowered by my Soul of the Forest. This way it will be highlighted close to my raid frames or party frames when I have used a Soul of the Forest empowered hot on a target, so I do not overlap it, so I don't waste the power of Soul of the Forest, which by the way is pretty huge. So it's something that you can use yourself. You just need to type in Wago, which is a website, the appropriate name of the weak aura, and you can just import it yourself. I use nameplate totems to track important totems on the ground, so that I can swiftly remove them, including grounding, including tremor. And then I also have a custom one that I put myself, which is a symbiotic relationship missing, which is a new talent, which is right here. Symbiotic relationship. This is quite useful, especially in arena, because it's extra healing. You should always use this. It's like 2 to 3% of my healing, so it's extra throughput. In the same way where you used to pick up a 3% versatility talent that was right here before the rework. It's the same thing. So this buff is also not dispellable from what I know. So you just need to remember to put it at the start of the game before the gates open. You don't have to refresh it. You don't have to change it to the target that is at the moment being trained. It's completely fine to leave it on your teammate that is not taking damage, because it's 50,000 mana and it's a 2-second cast, so it's not something that you should be using during a game, especially as a restoration druid, because whenever you are putting every single hot on a teammate, usually the enemy team swaps off that target. So there is never a situation where I would reapply this in a game. Just on the starting room and you're fine. Details is useful to track every spell that is coming in, so you know if you're doing something wrong on your rotation when you compare yourself to other restoration druids, or if you are not using a talent properly. If you know, for example, that you should be doing X amount of healing from a spell and you're not doing it through checking out these details, maybe you can find ways to fix your own gameplay, for example. It's a great tool to be able to know how you healed certain games versus other games, how much you're getting purged, how much you're getting CC out, how many clones you're getting off every game, and so on. In regards to macros, I use a stopcasting macro for each one of my shapeshifts, with the only exception being Ancient of Lore or the old Tree of Life. This allows me to stopcast when I want to shift into bear form or cat form. So for example, if I'm trying to clone an enemy and I see them popping something on me that would kill me or try to CC me, like polymorph, if I'm trying to clone and I see them casting, with one single button I can just shift into bear form to avoid incoming CC or to pre-bear form a stun setup. The Dispel 1, 2, 3 macro, which basically allows me to dispel all three my frames, so myself and the other two DPS, without having to target. Then I have root 1, 2, 3, so that I'm able to root without having to target the enemy. And also clone 1, 2, 3. I also have bash 1, 2, 3. I know this is a lot of binds, but bear with me. I used to use Hibernate 1, 2, 3 as well, but I had to drop it, because I'm also not running Hibernate. But even if I was, I wouldn't bother with having 3 more binds just for this. It's too many binds, so I had to cut something. I decided to cut Hibernate 1, 2, 3. This is not useful anymore, because you need to be able to see Efflorescence as a normal spell because of Ancient of Lore. When I pop Ancient of Lore, I have Mass Blooming. If I have the macro, I cannot use Mass Blooming. So I need to be... it just bugs it out, so I just cannot use this macro anymore. The last thing that I forgot to mention is Kick 1, 2, 3. In this patch, with the rework of the class tree, we get access to Skull Bash, and it's extremely easy to get it. So it is, in my opinion, mandatory to use in Arena, but also in BG Blitz. So I had to make room for Kick 1, 2, 3 as well on my binds. This is extremely important because being able to kick on the fly is extremely useful for obvious reasons. You cannot have it bind on a single bind, So you would have to focus kick or target with kick and then kick. It's not as efficient as having kick 1, 2, 3. So I had to make room for kick 1, 2, 3 on my binds, one way or another. Player innervate. This basically makes it so whenever I press innervate with the macro, I always target myself. Even if in BG Blitz I'm targeting another healer, with this macro I will still innervate myself. Okay, sorry. The last two ones are Vortex Roots macro, which allows me to ping and use that cursor for Vortex and Roots. This way I can let my teammate know whenever I am pressing this button with Vortex, so they know where the enemy target will be pulled back in. For example, if they try to TP out, teleport out, or use a movement cooldown like a blink or a shadow step, they will still be pulled back to the center of the vortex. And this is the most important macro for Restoration Druids. Please use this and have a comfortable keybind for this. This is a stop casting macro, but it's also a cancel form macro. I have it all in one for Restoration Druids specifically because of how the class works. When you are casting, unless you are in bunking form, you are always in human form. So you can have this macro all in one. So if you are fake casting, you have this bind, so that it's harder to tell for the opponent when you are trying to fake cast, because you are not giving away any cues to the fact that you are stop casting. So if you are moving to stop cast, is way easier to tell from the opponent compared to fake casting without moving. And the second part of the macro is the cancel for macro. This allows you to power shift, quote unquote power shift. It's a way that druids have described this way of shifting for ages. Basically what you're doing with this macro is you are using it to shift out of form instead of pressing the form a second time. Why do you do this? It's because you can shift in and out of forms twice as fast compared to having to press the same button. So now I will showcase how it works. If you are using the button, this is what will happen. Mind you, I am spamming the shift macro. I mean the form, so bear form or cat form. If you can see, that is extremely slow. You will be able to shift in and out of form once a second. Using the macro, instead, this is what happens. So you are shifting in and out of form twice as fast, so every 0.5 seconds. Why would you do this? You would do this so that you remove slows and roots twice as much as the previous situation. This is key when you're trying to avoid a Ring of Frost or being permanently slowed by other things, and so that you can kite more efficiently when you are being trained, because you can remove slow, remove slow, remove slow, remove slow, remove slow, and remove slow again. A clear example is a DK trying to Chain of Ice spam you. You can remove slow twice as much. Even if you are in another situation, this power shifting technique is extremely important that you master as soon as you can. It is a game changer for Restoration Druids, or for Druids in general. The stat priority for Restoration Druid hasn't changed really. We still want to prioritize mastery on every slot as much as we can. And the second close one is haste for the regular PvP 3v3 build. Mastery empowers every healing we do on targets with healing over time effects. What changed this patch is that there is a diminishing return effect on mastery, so that the most important part of mastery is given out, like 90% plus, by 6 or 7 hots being present on a target. Which means that Life Bloom, which counts as 3, plus Rejuvenation, plus Regrowth, Wild Growth, and the second Rejuve is enough to grant 92 to 95% of the bonus healing that the Mastery will ever give you. Any more hots on a singular target will not be nearly as beneficial, and you're better off spamming. But in any case, Mastery is still our best stat by not a small margin, and Haste will just helps complement this fact by helping us with global cooldowns to apply hots faster on our team, and it has a double dip effect by the fact that Haste also increases healing down by hots by itself. Versatility is also a stat that you do not want to neglect. The only thing that you don't want is crit at all, actually. So you want to avoid the chess piece and craft an Algari alternative this season. We will not be able to use the headpiece from engineering, because the headpiece this time around is extremely good, as you can see. So if you are using engineering, the only thing left to craft when you are done with tier set is the bracers. That's it. We will not be able to use the headpiece with full mastery like we used to do in the first season. Let me see if I can find it. There it is. So this Algari competitor leather brassers is the only thing that we will use from engineering, and it's extremely useful to use because it's full mastery. So you cannot ask for a better piece of gear. For everything else, whenever we will have enough conquest, after you're done with the tier set and rings, jewelry, and the trinkets, and you are done with upgrading the normal gear from the conquest, from the honor version to the conquest version, the offsets will be your next target, which for now should be the bloody token alternative, which I'm displaying right now, which is 675. And the great thing about this is that I do not use any conquest to get this. I just need bloody tokens, which you can farm in World PvP or by doing world quests while having war mode on. And when we have enough conquest, we will replace these offset pieces with Algari pieces with the same stat allocation. So what I would recommend you to do is to have 2 pieces of jewelry with haste mastery, and then after that you will have every single piece of versatility of crafted gear with versatility and mastery. That includes the pieces of gear from conquest. So if a slot can be filled with versatility, mastery, conquest, gladiator piece of gear, you will use it. For everything else, for example, if the belt piece does not have a versatility mastery option from the conquest vendor, you will have to craft it yourself. The last thing to mention is that in the last season I opted to play with versatility embellishments. This is not the case anymore, because these embellishments do not scale with gear. The only thing that actually scales with gear is Titanic Redistribution Beacon. So this patch, from this patch onwards, I will be recommending Titanic Redistribution Beacon on Restoration Druids, which I will have to recraft my rings for, because it's by far the best embellishment for us healers. Okay, so for the Enchants, I think that the best one is the Mastery proc. Right now I have a shitty version, but this week I will be getting the conquest gear, so I will be crafting. No, I will just get the conquest gear, so I will apply Stormbound Artistry rank 3. Everything else should be Cursed Mastery, the Council Intellect. Remember this? I'm using a shitty version right now, but the Council Intellect rank 3 and Intellect plus 5% mana on the legs. Then you have the boots, which should be. You should use the 900 stamina enchant on it. And then you have the bracers and cloaks, which should always be the leech effect. Some people would advise you to play with the speed, but you do not need any extra speed on Restoration Druid. You can play with Flying Swiftness, which increases your movement speed by itself a lot already. And if that's not enough, you can drop High Winds, and you can play with Tireless Pursuit. If you are playing versus a comp that is extremely hard to kite and they want to kill you, you can use this one instead. For races, right now it's just a Night Elf Overlord's Dominion situation. I'm sorry, but Night Elves right now are the best race for Restoration Druids. A close second might be High Mountain Tauren or normal Tauren, but High Mountain is a little bit better, specifically for Shuffle, because in Shuffle you cannot drink. So all things considered, you have two options as a Restoration Druid. If you go High Mountain Tauren, you have the option to be more tanky as a normal Druid, way more. High Mountain Torrents got buffed in this patch as well. The damage reduction that they get is quite higher than it used to be. It's especially useful into assassination and rot comps in general. But with all that said, the Night Elf is still the best. It's not even close, just because of the way you can immune CC, you can meld drink in 3v3. You can do a lot of cool stuff with Shadow Meld. You can meld with the effect, Ghost Health and then Rake Stun while you are in combat, and High Mountain. High Mountain has its niche, as I said, in Shuffle, because in Shuffle, especially at high rating, you will be constantly a target. So having a charge effect with your racial, which is Bull Rush, and being passively more tanky from the fact that you gain 1% extra versatility from High Mountain, and you have a special effect that reduces the baseline damage from all spells that attack you, or all attacks in general, is very useful for a healer that is so squishy. It basically helps with one glaring weakness of the Restoration Druid, even though it's a small effect, of course. The mini rework that we got in this patch actually gave us a lot of options in the class tree, so the tree on the left. We are supposed to adapt and pick different talents depending on what we're facing. Let me start by removing the talents that are optional. So Rake Stun is optional, Feline Swiftman is optional, Symbiotic Relationship and Innervate is optional. That's about it, actually. They stealth nerf Lycara's Meditation, so right now in order to benefit from it you have to stay in that form for 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds or something. So it's actually trash. So you don't want this. You'd rather pick up other things that are more useful. The only reason why this would activate is if you are in bear form and you bear form friends regen and you wait for the friends regen to finish, but this is way too low of an uptime to justify Lycara's Meditation, especially considering how low it is on the tree. They just nerfed it and they killed the talent, which was one of the new talents, by the way. So no flame, of course. These 4 talents are optional. So one thing you can do is either pick Feline Swiftness, or you can pick Ursine Vigor for more tankiness, paired with perfectly honed instincts, if you know for a fact that you are going to get trained. One popular spec right now, comp right now, is Windwalker Demon Hunter with Preservation Evoker. In this case, you are going to get trained most likely, so you want both these talents to keep yourself alive. These paired with Innervate and the Symbiotic Relationship means that you're also healing the cleave that your teammates are going to get quite well. One extra thing you could do to adapt is to drop Starlight Conduit just for this case. If you are getting trained, you don't have time to start search anyways, in order to pick up more speed, so that you don't get yourself killed that easily. If all else fails, I mean, it's just up to your teammates to help you peel those off. So, if you don't want this much tankiness, you just want a shuffle build, this is what I would recommend, which is my standard build for the class tree. I'll get to restoration talents in a moment. If you are facing a DK, you don't want to rake stun, most likely, and you are better off playing Monk Inform anyways, because the way you outplay a Death Knight is if you play from ranged, close to a pillar, and when you come out of the pillar, you are in Monk Inform and you let him bait his grip, because if you bait his grip while you are in Monk Form, you can wild charge out of it, because wild charge in Monk Form acts as if it's a disengage. Let me show you how it works. So if you are in Monk Form, your wild charge will be like this, and basically how it works is you get gripped in and you can wild charge out of the grip away from the Death Knight, which is way better than having to travel form and wild charge, because sometimes if you get gripped in, your travel form wild charge will be forward, so you will land exactly where the Death Knight is. So the best way is to use Monkey form and to be able to wild charge with Monkey form up. It's also way less noticeable if you play with the Glyph of Stars. One extra thing you can do in the class tree, bypass Symbiotic Relationship and Innervate, or just Symbiotic Relationship to pick up Typhoon, or you can drop Rake Stun to get Typhoon, depending on the game, of course. And Typhoon is extremely valuable into certain matchups, for example into Warriors, because you can deny a charge with a Typhoon, or a Heroic Leap, even better, because you can knock their charge. But it also depends on what teammates you're fighting with, because if you're fighting with a Shaman, this will DR with Thunderstorm, so you don't want to play this if you're fighting a Warrior with a Shaman on your team. In regards to our specialization tree, which is the restoration one, not much has changed since Season 1. I will briefly talk about the most important interactions that you need to know in order to perform as a Restoration Druid. So the first thing you need to know is Soul of the Forest. Soul of the Forest basically makes your Swiftman empower your next healing over time effect on the target, which can be either a regrowth or rejuve or a wild growth. You should never press it on wild growth in arena, just on rejuves or regrowth, depending on the situation. This stacks with your NS, so if you Swiftman NS regrowth, your regrowth will be basically almost a lay on hands. One extra thing you need to be aware of is that Wild Synthesis makes it so when you press Growth Guardians, it will put a Wild Growth on the target and on all the targets close to the target that they're healing. This is extremely important into Purge teams, because this Wild Growth acts as a Purge protection. This will not scale with Mastery, this healing over time effect, but it can be purged. So it basically is a trash buff that helps you with dealing with purges. So in a way, it's like overgrowth. You don't want to overgrowth in your rotation. You just want to keep it when you get CC for a long period of time, so you instantly put your HOTS back up, or you use it to deal with purges. In the same way, you should be aware of this so you don't waste your trends. You don't press them on cooldown. You just want to keep one trend, so the cooldown is always going, but the 2 stacks left should be used appropriately. You shouldn't waste them. One other important talent that you need to be aware of is Dream State. Dream State is extremely powerful, especially in Shuffle, but you need to be able to use Strength. So that's where positioning comes in. If you can go behind a pillar and fully trank, not only you are getting a full heal on the whole team, you're also getting your cooldowns back up, including your Ancient of Lore, including your Swiftmend, including your Bark Skin and Iron Bark, including your NS, everything. Basically everything gets reduced by this, and it is an extremely powerful tool to be used wisely in Shuffle. There are other matchups where I prefer to use it, but they are not exactly... It's not nearly as impactful as it is in Shuffle, let's say, because the way the dampening works in Shuffle makes it so this talent gets value if you can get your Iron Bark 20 seconds earlier before your teammate dies just because of dampening. Right now I'm opting for Prosperity over Verdant Infusion because I'm playing with Wildstalker. I'll get to Wildstalker in a moment. What you need to know is thriving vegetation helps you keep your teammates alive, and it enables you to press your Soul of the Forest empowerment on rejuves, because this 30% instant healing is extremely powerful when you are using it on a rejuve. When you're using Soul of the Forest on a rejuve. Master Shapeshifter is a 3v3 talent only. It helps us keep our mana going for a long period of time, compared to like 3 minutes. This is not what you will be using in Shuffle. In Shuffle you have freedom to pick other things. You can play with Liveliness. You could try Reforestation, even though for Ancient of Lore it's nerfed. You need 8 casts of Swiftman, but it's still good compared to not having it, or compared to Master Shapeshifter in Shuffle. So the main thing that you will change from Shuffle to 3v3 is just this talent. And Dream State over Cultivation. So in a 3v3 situation, so in a Shuffle this will be the setup, and in 3v3 you will opt for something like this. The reason why you don't always want to Dream State in 3v3 is because the cooldown reduction is not nearly as impactful in 3v3. And if the enemy team is coordinated, you will not have a chance to press Tranquility, unless you get a precog proc. In Ancient of Lore, you can be kicked, so you cannot Ancient of Lore Tranquility. It doesn't work like that. You will be kicked, and you will not be able to press anything for the duration of the lockout, because Blossom Burst and Mass Blooming are nature casts. Okay, so there is also Rampant Growth, which basically means that when you have Life Blooms up, the regrowth will be applied to Life Bloom targets as well as your target. So if I have 3 players in total, including me, and I Life Bloom my partners, I can go behind a pillar, press regrowth behind a pillar. Let's say this is a pillar. So I go behind a pillar with 2 Life Blooms up, I press regrowth, and my 2 friendly arena mates will also gain the regrowth. This is extremely powerful, especially with my build, because you will be consuming a Swiftmend. Swiftmend will consume a healing over time effect on the target. The order in which Swiftmend removes HOTS is wild growth first. If there is no wild growth, it will consume a regrowth. If there is none of them, it will consume a rejuve. Remember that you cannot press Swiftmend if you don't have any of those healing spells on the target, regardless of whether or not you're playing Prosperity or Verdant Infusion. You have 2 stacks of NS in this patch. I am using the cooldown reduction on Swiftmend, on Nature Swiftness, because in this patch, Ancient of Lore is a cast time, but what you can do is you can press NS, Ancient of Lore. So I've talked about in great lengths about Ancient of Lore. Let me talk about other PvP talents that are important that you can switch to or pick up depending on what you're facing. The first one is High Winds. It increases the range of Typhoon, Cyclone and Roots. It's very straightforward. It means that you can clone from safer positions than before. You almost always pick this together with the other 2 talents, at least in my opinion. Ancient of Lore is, I've talked about this. You basically get 30% damage reduction when you are in this form, and you are immune to CC, and you do a lot of healing. Those 2 spells do not cost any mana, mind you, so it's even stronger than it looks. And then you have Forest Guardian. Forest Guardian basically means that when you are using your Boomkin abilities, Starfire, Wrath, and Cyclone, you get an extension on your HOTS that are currently active. If you Star Surge or if you use Ferocious Bite, Rip or Maim, you also gain an extra effect which increases the tick rate of your HOTS by 20%. This means that in the same, the HOTS do not expire faster, they simply heal 20% more, or you can say that they tick 20% faster, but at the same time the duration is the same, so they heal more. The easy way to look at it is that it's just that they heal more. One extra thing you could do, for me those 2 talents are irreplaceable. You should always play with Forest Guardian and Ancient of Lore because of Star Surge. That's also why I'm picking those talents, by the way. This way I have a 6-second cooldown on Star Surge and I'm supposed to use it on cooldown, so that the uptime of Forest Guardian second part, which is the heal over time effect tick rate, has close to a 50% uptime, which is insane. It's basically 4 times liveliness effect, except your HOTS do not expire 20% faster, mind you. So it's insane. It's a really strong effect, and you should always look for opportunities to use Star Surge, even if you're not playing with Master Shapeshifter. So the only talent really that I would recommend swapping in and out of is High Winds. You can play Thorns if you are facing double melee. Thorns has been reworked this patch. It is not an active effect or an active ability anymore. Right now, if you bark skin or iron bark, you get this effect. And it slows the opponent. It is extremely valuable, again, if you are getting focused down, because you gain both the benefits in bark skin or iron bark. But if you are not always focused down, I would advise you to play with Tireless Pursuit, which basically means that you are extremely fast. So if you get swap to, you get this effect, which is a lot of movement speed for a normal form, and you can kite around pillars extremely efficiently while also healing yourself. This is a very underrated talent, and it is really strong into cobs that may swap on you, but do not always swap on you. One last thing is that for battlegrounds, so BG Blitz rated battlegrounds, you want to play with early spring. This basically gives your wild growth the opportunity to give life bloom to 6 people every 30 seconds. This also means that you get more benefit from harmonious blooming. So your AoE heals on your team, especially in big fights, are very powerful. So when we talk about hero talents, Keeper of the Grove lost quite a bit of power compared to the last patch for two reasons. The first one is that the new PvP talent Ancient of Lore, which is the superior version of Incarnate Tree of Life, from my point of view, uh, actually spawns two less trends compared to Tree of Life. Tree of Life spawns over its duration in total 3 trends. Instead, with Ancient of Lore, you only get 1 per use of Ancient of Lore. This means that Keeper of the Grove, while using Ancient of Lore, loses a lot of its value. At the same time, the reason why trends used to be really strong was that stacking mastery hots on a target was impacting the healing that the trends themselves were doing. But with the rework of mastery, you are losing quite a lot of healing on a singular target, provided you have all hots up on that target. So one popular strat was to fully hot one target with every single hot that we had at our disposal, and then use trends to do further burst healing. But now with the new situation, quote unquote, of mastery plus Keeper of the Grove nerf through Ancient of Lore, I think that Wild Stalker is the superior choice. So let's further dive into it. So Keeper of the Grove has a few key talents that you need to be aware of. The first one is Trends of the Moon. So whenever you press Trends, they will spread the moonfire around for you. This is just extra damage, so it's useful to know that you don't have to apply it yourself. Then you have this, which means that whenever you Swiftwind, you gain extra haste. So your hots overall will do more healing for a short period of time, and you have a shorter GCD. And then there is Blooming Infusion. Blooming Infusion means that whenever you press 5 regrowths, you gain an instant cast Wrath, Starfire, or instant roots, and they deal bonus damage. And when you do 5 star surges, you will gain an extra instant cast regrowth or entangling roots. This basically means that with Forest Guardian, you will constantly be proccing this talent, and it can be useful. The only problem with this synergy is that Keeper of the Grove loses value from Ancient of Lore, which means that when you are using Keeper of the Grove, at the same time you are using Normal Tree. But in Normal Tree you are already instant cast regrowthing for the duration of the tree. So basically all this to say that Forest Blooming Infusion, loses some value. Just by the fact that Keeper of the Grove synergizes with trends. All this explanation to say that my preferred choice is Wild Stalker, this patch, because of how strong Ancient of Lore is. The reason why Wild Stalker is so good with Ancient of Lore is that in Ancient of Lore you are applying the missing hots on a target, which also includes regrowths and wild growths. Why does this matter? Because with wild growth, regrowths, you apply symbiotic blooms on the target. One other way you apply symbiotic blooms is through Swiftmans, which is also why with the Wild Stalker I'm playing with 2 Swiftman charges and the Renewing Surge cooldown reduction. With symbiotic blooms on a target, you gain a 20% flat bonus healing, which is the equivalent of Keeper of the Grove having 4 different trends up. So it's a massive healing buff. This counts regardless of how many stacks of symbiotic plumes you have on a target. So this also functions as a purge protection because symbiotic plumes can be purged. So we further protect ourselves from being spam purged in a way, because that's one of the glaring weaknesses of the Druid. So the more HOTS you can apply every global, the safer you are. This is also a proc, so all in all, Wild Stalker I think is the better choice for us this season in organized 3v3. And in Shuffle, those two are quite close to each other because in normal Tree of Life, you don't get punished quite as much compared to organized 3v3, and you can safely fully utilize the Tree of Life instead of being CC'd for half of the duration compared to 3v3. The last thing you need to know about Wild Stalker is that whenever you are playing with a Wizard Cleave and you are trying to utilize Rip and Maim to help with stuns with your team, you can use this talent to get combo points while you are healing. Whenever you dispel, you gain a combo point in cat form. These combo points do not expire. This means that after you dispel your team 5 times, even if you haven't even been in cat form at all yet, you can just go cat form and do a full combo point maim stun. This also further is gives you bonus from Master Shapeshifter because you are just gaining a flat 175k extra mana. This only is worth doing if you are playing with a caster cleave that needs stuns. So you are just providing that for them. So the hardest part about learning Restoration Druid is most definitely the rotation. There are a few things that you need to keep in mind when you are trying to maximize your healing output. The first one is the fact that mastery is the most important part of your class. So your healing is extremely dampened if you don't have any healing over time effects up. This includes if you are doing an NS. If you don't have any healing over time effects and you press with Soul of the Forest NS, your NS will be way weaker than if you have at least 5 to 6 to 7 HOTS on the target. We're talking about double. So you're doing half as much healing as you could if you properly do your rotation. So what does that look like? So whenever the gates open, you want to life bloom your teammates, you want to regrowth yourself, so everyone gets a regrowth because of rampant regrowth. Everyone has a regrowth. And go stealth. That should be your opening in every single rated game, whether it be 2v2 or 3v3. This allows you to have a lot of heals out, and at the same time you gain stealth relatively quickly, so an opener can be done like this, and you don't expose yourself to being placed in combat before you stealth, because stealth in the opener is a really strong thing, and you should always abuse the fact that you can go stealth as a Restoration Druid. So that's it. So you want to life bloom both of your teammates and press a regrowth and go stealth. Whenever you are in combat, your rotation should be like this. You have life bloom, then you should apply rejuves. so your teammate gets at least one rejuve. Then you want to trend at least once, so you get the cooldown rolling. After you have done that, you can spend the clear cast procs on regrowth if you do not fear getting kicked. If the damage is low, for example, you don't care about being kicked, so then you can regrowth with clear cast procs. And you should keep your rejuves going. If the damage comes in, you want to be able to press a Swiftmend on the target that is taking damage, so you gain the Soul of the Forest, and you empower one of your rejuves. At the same time, if you see the enemy opponent pressing big cooldowns, or in general, if your teammate is taking the focus target, I mean, if one of your teammates is taking most of the damage, you want to use Scenario Ward on that player. This is one pretty strong heal. You want to keep Grove Guardians going, and you want to keep your Swiftmend on cooldown, so that you don't waste the CD on it. So this should be your rotation. It should look like this. Now, when the damage is really coming in, for example with burst cooldowns such as Icy Veins, Avatar, copies from Windwalker, Incarnation from Druids, and so on, you want to look for an opportunity, with life blooms being up, to NS Ancient of Lore, so that you start spamming, and all this healing is free of charge. You're not using mana. Why do you want to pre Ancient of Lore? Because if the enemy team is popping offensive cooldowns at a decent rating and above, the first thing that they are looking to do is to CC the healer. That's always, every time, what happens. Every single game. Both in Shuffle, in 2v2, and in 3v3. So, being able to immune CC while the opponent has offensive cooldowns up is extremely strong. It's one of the strongest things about Agent of Lore. That said, your rotation, as I said, should look like this. So you get Swiftmend rolling and rejuves up. With this build specifically, you don't care if you are consuming a rejuve with Swiftmend, unless that rejuve is empowered by Soul of the Forest. So the only thing that you need to avoid is, if you already have a rejuve empowered by Soul of the Forest up on a target, you need to be careful not to consume it with Swiftmend, because that is a net healing loss. Like, you are better off waiting and applying another rejuve and trying to consume that. Ideally, you want to go behind a pillar, cast a regrowth, so that you are sure that you are consuming a regrowth with the Swiftmend instead of your rejuve. That's your healing rotation, basically. You want to be able to maximize healing over time effects on your targets. The hardest part about Restoration Druid is to be able to quickly target your teammates depending on what healing over time effects are about to expire. So one of the things that I would recommend first when you're trying to heal on Restoration Druid is to keybind target player, target party 1 and target party 2. Personally, I have that bound on my scroll wheel on my mouse. So scroll up is target me. Click of the scroll wheel is target party 1, and scroll down is target party 2. I do this so I do not get a carpal tunnel from pressing my rotational abilities, while also changing constantly my target for heals. So the last thing about the healing rotation is the fact that in bear form you have Frenzied Regen. and you also have renewal, but that's a cooldown. We'll talk about cooldowns trading rate later. But mainly frenzied regen. Frenzied regen also scales with mastery. So if you are pressing frenzied regen with no hots up, it's healing 850k a tick. So basically completely nothing. This is pre-dampening. This is empowered by HOTS, as I said, and it's extremely useful if you're getting trained. So if you're getting trained, your first priority is still to apply HOTS on yourself. The only exception is if you are facing a team that is trying to CC you with a stun and then go you. Then you want to try to pre-bear from a stun. Otherwise, your first priority for keeping yourself alive is always to keep HOTS rolling on yourself. So right now, with all these HOTS, my frenzied regen is ticking for 1,700,000. And this is just with 3 HOTS. Which is 5 with harmonious blooming. Because life bloom counts as 3 HOTS. So life bloom plus 2 rejuves is 5 stacks of mastery. That's how powerful the mastery is. Like, it more than doubles your healing. So that's why I'm putting so much emphasis on the healing rotation, so that you understand that your first thing that you need to keep in mind as a Restoration Druid is to keep HOTS up before you burst heal. Your burst healing comes from Soul of the Forest and NS. But you don't want to press those if you don't have healing over time effects on the target. Because otherwise your burst healing is halved. So it's never worth it. That's why Restoration Druid is weak to swaps. Because if you don't have HOTS on a target, you need to press HOTS first before you do any significant healing. In regards to damage rotation, as a Restoration Druid, the most important thing is to keep Star Surging. You should look for Star Surging on cooldown, so you get the maximum uptime on Forest Guardian. Other than that, you don't want to expose yourself from being locked on nature. So wrathing should be something that you do very seldomly. You don't want to expose yourself to being kicked on wrath, but what you can do is to cast Starfire, which is Arcane School. So if they kick you on Starfire, you can steal Cyclone, you can steal press anything. So Starfire does not share the school with anything. So you are free to cast this, especially with Master Shapeshifter talent. And other than that, it's still Star Surging on cooldown, and try to keep your HOTS rolling. So you don't want to be in a situation where you have no HOTS up on your team. So damaging on Restoration Druid should be something that you do mindful of this concept. So it's either one singular Star Surge every 6 seconds, and if you are trying to assist your team with a kill, it should be with Starfires. If you're not cloning. Cloning is usually the better option, but if the enemy team is on the R, you have the option to Starfire. With this build, of course. If you are not playing this build and you are playing with your team with wizards, and you need the main stun, then your damage should be Star Surge, and then you rake stun, you can rip, and you can maim. One extra thing you can do on this particular build is with Wildstalker you can just Moonfire. It doesn't cost that much mana, it's some damage, and the reason why I say that you should be doing this with this particular build is because with Keeper of the Grove, whenever you summon a Trent, those Trents will spread Moonfire for you. But for Wildstalker you don't get this quality of life thing, so you need to be using Moonfire yourself if you are trying to assist your team with damage. But it's something that I rarely do, to be honest, because Restoration Druid is very GCD intensive, so global cooldown intensive, if you haven't noticed. So I'm always trying to keep my hots rolling, and they expire very quickly. So at most I will be doing Starfire in my typical game, Star Surge in my typical game, with the other Cyclones every once in a while when I have the opportunity to go for a Cyclone. And other than that, I'm just healing or doing stuns. So when we talk about cooldown trading, the first thing that you need to know is that Ancient of Lore should be one of the first buttons that you press when the enemy team is doing the first set of burst cooldowns. So you shouldn't be using Ancient of Lore instantly as the gates open, almost never. But when you start the game, usually like 5 to 10 seconds in, the enemy team is popping burst cooldowns. So whenever that happens, before they CC you, ideally, but sometimes you need to wait for cooldown for CC. You should be using Ancient of Lore to deal with burst damage that is coming in. Other than that, you should look for your for your teammates to press their defensives first. And out of those defensives, you can use Iron Bark. Grove Guardian is something that you need to use on your rotation, and you use it on your rotation. You should always aim for this cooldown to keep going, so you don't sit on 3 stacks. But at the same time, you should always only use these cooldowns whenever it is appropriate to do so. You should be treating trends as if it's an extra hot, basically. You don't want to use Scenario Ward on a target that is taking no damage. In the same way, you don't want to waste trends when the damage is not there. It's as simple as that. One extra thing is that you don't want to press trends until you have used Ancient of Lore, because Scenario's Guidance actually reduces the cooldown on Ancient of Lore. So the Grove Guardians reduce the cooldown of Ancient of Lore the same way they would reduce Tree of Life cooldown. So that's why I suggest to use Ancient of Lore on the first set of cooldowns of the enemy, so that you get the cooldown going instantly, and then you can also press a trend, why not? So that while the form is up, you are still getting your trends, which will reduce the cooldown on Ancient of Lore. 76 seconds. As soon as my first trend disappears, I already got the cooldown reduction. And now this one as well. I got 3 seconds off. This effect is obviously reduced in PvP, but you get the point for Ancient of Lore. But you get the point. You gain extra CDR on it. Overgrowth, as I said before, is something that you should use out of CC so that you quickly get your hots rolling back. One classic example is if you get Kidney Stun into a full fear, your team does not have any healing over time effects at all. And so Overgrowth is a really strong tool to use out of CC, so that you don't fall too much behind. This is something that will come with experience on Restoration Druid, and it is important not to waste Overgrowth on your rotation, so that you only use it when it is required, when your teammate is in trouble, when you know that you don't have time to press Life Bloom plus Rejuve. So that's about it. And as I said before, when you are getting spam burst, sometimes you have to press this, but other than that, you shouldn't be using this. You should be using this when it's appropriate, because it's a 1 minute cooldown. It's not something that you can use as a Swift Mend or as a Scenario Ward. Other than that, renewal is also a really strong defensive that should not be wasted, as well as frenzied regen. And the reason why it's so strong is because it's off the GCD, and sometimes if you are in trouble and you get out, you can greed your trinket with skin and renewal out of a stun. Because the enemy usually cannot kill you through a bark skin if you press bark skin at 100% HP, and that's a great way to rotate your cooldowns. So for one example, if you're getting trained, is if you skin the first go, maybe they get you low, so also well-honed instincts proc, and if you have both of those down, so if you don't have bark skin and you don't have well-honed instinct for the coming setup on you, the next time maybe you can trinket an S Ancient of Lore and you're completely fine, because also Ancient of Lore is 30% damage reduction in this patch. That's basically the way you can rotate your cooldowns. If you're using Ancient of Lore and you don't have it up, and you only have Trinket, maybe the next set of cooldowns should be Trinket Ironbark yourself. If you're getting trained, use Ironbark on yourself on the second go. So on the third go, you have backup Bark Skin, and you maybe also have well-honed instincts coming back up. So that's the way you juggle all your cooldowns. In the same way, Vortex is a really powerful tool that should be used into melees, but also into ranged, so that you can kite behind a pillar if you are getting trained. Tranquility should be used out of line of sight of the enemy or in a precognition proc. You are very susceptible from being kicked on Tranquility, and it's an extremely powerful heal. That is basically, if you get to channel it fully, it's lay on hands on your whole team. There is no way around it. What else? Bash should be used. You shouldn't forget to use Bash when you are playing offensive, and the same you should be treating clones. Innervate should be used in 3v3 as soon as possible and on cooldown, so that you don't you get at least a couple uses per round or per game. You have 2 dashes on Restoration Druid. The most powerful one is Stampeding Roar, and it's not close actually. The reason why I say this is because with Stampeding Roar, not only you are speeding up your whole team, but this Stampede works in all forms, so in human form, in cat form, in bear form. So when you are power shifting with Stampeding Roar, you are benefiting fully from the movement speed buff, because you are getting out of slows that much more often. So that's one way to benefit from Stampeding Roar. Dash is also powerful, but if you are getting slowed in cat form, then when you are in human, you don't get any movement speed, so you need to get back on cat form. So out of the two, Stampeding Roar is the most powerful cooldown for movement, and also to get out of danger if you're getting trained. The most important thing that you can use while being trained, though, is while charging in human form to your allies. So if you just got leg sweep, let's say, and you're getting a lot of damage on you, you can press kill if the Windwalker is popping every single cooldown. Out of the stun, you can leap to your teammate like this, and then you can start kiting around the pillar. You get the point here. You should, as a Restoration Druid, utilize the fact that you can shapeshift in forms to be able to kite your opponents. So that's why Restoration Druid is not that bad into melee cleaves, is because you can abuse pillars to be able to evade goes on you. The only way an enemy melee cleave can kill you is if you are in a stun and your teammates cannot peel, really. Other than that, you should be able to get melees off of you if you are running around a pillar with all these tools available to you. You don't want to risk opening up yourself to kicks on Restoration Druid when the enemy team has cooldowns up. So if they have burst cooldowns up. So one of the biggest mistakes that you can do is at the start of the game, you try to clone. That's the biggest mistake you can do as a Restoration Druid. The only way to guarantee a clone at the start of the game is if you are doing CC to cover for kicks. For example, if you rig stun, you turn around a pillar, so no one is in line of sight of you, and you clone the enemy. If that's not an option, you shouldn't be trying to Cyclone in the opener, because if they kick you in the opener, then you can CC. They can CC out of the kick lockout duration, and then you are forced to trinket in the opener, which is extremely bad, by the way. So cycloning should be something that should be done out of the enemy team offensive cooldowns. So the best time to clone should be when the enemy does not have offensive cooldowns up, and you can freely try to fake cast them so that you gain a precog proc so you can get a cyclone off. The time when you have to play defensive is when you know that the enemy team has cooldowns coming back up, so that you focus on your healing first in that case. It's really bad if you get kicked on clone and the HOTS on your team fall off and then you get CC'd out of the lockout, because Restoration Druid with no HOTS up is in a very vulnerable position. The whole team that plays with a Restoration Druid that has no HOTS up is in a very weakened and vulnerable position, generally speaking. So Cyclone should be something that, as I said, should be something that happens after, not at the start of the game. Dealing with kicks is something that will come with experience, and trying to fake cast is part of it. And if you are trying to learn Restoration Druid, Cycloning should be something that comes way later. Managing mana on a Restoration Druid is quite straightforward if you have learned what the basic rotation is. Every hot has a mana cost attached to it, and it's different based on which hot it is. So Life Bloom costs 40k, Rejuves cost 52k, Regrowth is the most expensive one that you will use on a regular basis, while Wild Growth is even more expensive, but you don't want to cast Wild Growth unless you have an Innervate being used, because the healing is not justifiable. The healing does not justify the mana cost in Arena. If you are using Wild Growth in BG Blitz with Early Spring Talent, then it's worth it, because you are healing a lot of people with it, and every 30 seconds you get a Life Bloom effect on them. But in Arena, you generally want to avoid casting Wild Growth, especially because you can get kicked on it. So the healing is low, the mana cost is high, and you risk being kicked, so you're better off pressing Regrowth instead. How can you out-sustain your opponents? Well, the first thing to know is that if you play Restoration Druid, you should be comfortable in 3v3 to keep your teammates alive with healing over time effects, and you should look for opportunities to drink in an ideal situation, because with every hot available, if you, for example, scenario onward, then you have a window of like 10 seconds where your teammate is still taking a lot of healing, and you have you can go for drinks quite safely. It's also important to note that on Restoration Druid, while being a night elf, you can set up drinks really easily, because if you are in combat, let's say, and you are healing your teammates, if you go behind a pillar in combat, you can melt drink, and then you can actually stealth in cat form while drinking. The drink will not stop. These are the basics for Restoration Druid that are constant throughout the expansions. And now I will go over what happened in this expansion. So in this expansion we got Master Shapeshifter. No, actually in Dragonflight we got this. But basically what this talent does is it gives you mana back whenever you are doing using spells outside of Restoration Druid. So if you are using Rat, Starfire or Star Surge from Moonkin, from Balanced Specialization, you get mana back. If you Iron Fur in bear form, we're not spec'd into it, but hypothetically, you get mana back. And if you use cat form abilities with full combo points, you get mana back. So in this particular build, we will only benefit from using it on Star Surge, on Starfires, and on Rats. If you are playing with a spell cleave and you are playing with Rip and Maim, using a full combo point Maim stun will give you a lot of mana back. Like, it's 175k mana, so it's basically like more than 5 rats worth of mana. So both of those are really good. What's also important to note this patch is that Forest Guardian also triggers from it. So what we got this patch is a built-in mana regeneration tool that needs to be pressed every 6 seconds, that also empowers your healing over time effects, as we talked about before. So in 3v3 you will use Master Shapeshifter to your advantage, so that you don't run out of mana anytime soon. With this talent I see myself ooming in 7 to 8 minutes, so our mana dispatch with Ancient of Lore and Master Shapeshifter is really good, provided you are pressing Star Surge on cooldown, which is not easy to do. I'll admit that using Star Surge on cooldown is something that requires a lot of practice, because you are also trying to heal your team, and then you will have to target an opponent and then use Star Surge, and then going back to healing your team might be a little bit hard to do when you are under pressure. So if you don't have any pressure at the moment, so your team is not at risk of dying, then it can be easy to do. But when the enemy team is bursting, it can be counterintuitive that you should, for healing, you should go for a Star Surge, because it turns out Forest Guardian is better than pressing, for example, a Rejuve. But in any case, I'm getting sidetracked here. For mana specifically, Master Shapeshifter is insane for 3v3. You will not need to worry about mana for shuffles because of Ancient of Lore. As I've said before, Blossom Burst and Mass Blooming do not cost any mana. So that's also the reason why Ancient of Lore saves you mana in the long run, compared to using Tree of Life. So in the normal shuffle build, we will opt out of Master Shapeshifter, precisely because during Ancient of Lore we get basically an Innervate effect. Then we have Innervate itself, which should be used on cooldown, of course, and when the damage is coming in. But be careful not to use Innervate during Ancient of Lore because it's a complete waste. Because as I've said, all the spells that you're supposed to press in Ancient of Lore, which are Blossom Burst and Mass Blooming, do not cost any mana. The only exception would be if you are dispelling a full crowd control effect on your team. Then you would prioritize this spell over those two healing spells, even in Ancient of Lore. But anything else, healing wise, you should always prioritize those two spells. They are just too good to press anything else during the Ancient of Lore form. So as I said before during the guide, positioning is extremely key on Restoration Druid. You should always look for opportunities to get away from the fight. You will find yourself being focused a lot of games. What happens usually is that a melee or a ranged class will try to do a go on you. What you need to do is to play defensively when that happens and get close to a pillar. The worst case scenario is if you and your partners are close to each other and the enemy team collapses on you. That's the worst thing that can happen to us as a Restoration Druid. And the only way to get out of this situation is to NS Ancient of Lore. Because by doing that, you are quite safe yourself and you can focus on healing while not worrying about being triple stunned and being killed, triple killed in this situation. If you don't have these tools at your disposal, you need to Stampede Roar and get out of the fight. Ideally, you should never get in a position where the enemy team gets a triple stack, regardless of what comp you're playing, because Restoration Druid is extremely weak to swaps. So if you make it easy to the enemy team to focus you down, and then once you are fully hotted, they instantly focus your teammate, then what happens is that you will find yourself struggling a lot because you will not be able to keep up all the hots on everyone. And it's also hard to kite the enemy team if you are triple stacked, of course. So the worst position you can have is if you are close to your teammates. You should always aim yourself to be at least 20 yards from the fight and from your team. 20 yards is actually really good because with this position you can actually go for clones on the enemy team, and also you are not too exposed to what's going on. If you are playing with a spell cleave, you can take this concept even to a bigger range difference. So something I used to do a lot while playing a spell cleave in Shadowlands, and it's still true now, is if I can go for a triangle formation as a Restoration Druid playing with two wizard in my team. So for example, if I'm playing with Mage Lock, I want to be back like 40 yards from the fight, so that I make it harder to the enemy team to swap to me, while one of my teammates is here and the other teammate of mine is here, for example. So sort of like a triangle formation. During a dynamic game, one of your team members might pull back because they are getting focused down. So they want to LOS the ranged classes from the enemy team, for example. Or if they are playing a warlock, they can teleport behind a pillar. So if your teammate pulls back because they are getting focused, for example here, then you need to reposition yourself so that you are not stacked with your team. This is a tough concept to implement in your games, but just try to do your best because this is a really powerful thing you can do as a Restoration Druid. Mobility is one of the strengths of Restoration Druid, and utilized well will make it hard to the enemy team to connect to you in the first place, so that you can negate the fact that you are quite squishy if the enemy team collapses on you. So in terms of Restoration Druid comps, you have a lot of options. Your best bet right now, until they nerf it, is Affliction Warlocks in general, because they have access to a really strong force set. Most definitely, I would say that that force set is broken. So until they nerf that particular thing, I would advise you to play with an Affliction Warlock plus a melee. The third person in the team for this comp can be a Windwalker, a Demon Hunter, an Assassination Rogue, or a Feral Druid. The win conditions for the comp change slightly depending on the melee that you are picking. If you are playing with a Windwalker, it's more about setups and do damage in those situations. If you play with a Feral or an Assassination Rogue, you are trying instead to finish off the game through raw pressure and just doing damage to the whole team. And with Demon Hunter, it's a bit of both. You can kill people in a stun, and the overall goal is to do as much damage as possible to all three members of the enemy team, while the Demon Hunter finish them off. If they nerf Affliction, a second best option might be Mage Lock with Demonology plus Frost Mage. I've seen it played already this season and it looked quite convincing as a spell cleave. In general, Frost Mage has been really strong this expansion, and it didn't change with this patch. So Demonology also is getting a pretty strong tier set. So it's definitely an evergreen comp that is going to be quite strong this patch. Something else you can try this patch is Turbo Cleave with enhancement Fury Warrior. And the reason I say this is because with Ancient of Lore we actually can heal melee cleaves once again. That said, right now melee cleaves are struggling in general because of the presence of Frost Mages. Maybe with Affliction Warlocks being overwhelming by the time that they all gain access to Force Set bonus, Frost Mage will drift out of the meta. But for now, I would say that melee cleaves just get too countered by any Frost Mage team. Both FMP, so Feral Mage, or Outlaw Mage, or Sub-Rogue Mage, Frost Mage. So melee cleaves just struggle into those teams. So it's definitely a second pick option. It's not your best comp. You could try and play with BM Hunter plus a Devastation. Devastation evokers are actually really good for Restoration Druid for the fact that they can rescue you out of danger. They can time stop you if you are in trouble. So Devastation actually offers a lot of utility to the team for a Restoration Druid. So that we don't just explode as being a preferred target, and we actually heal a Devastation Evoker quite well. We have quite a bit of synergy, those two classes together, just by the fact that our HOTS function well with the Devastation Evoker defensives, so both Renewing Blades and Obsidian Scales. Let's see, what else? So let's recap. You can play with Affliction plus a melee, which can be all for those classes that I quoted, which is Demon Hunter, Windwalker, Assassination Rogue, Feral. You can play with Mage Lock. You can play with Enhancement Fury Warrior. and you can play with Devastation BM Hunter. The meta is still evolving, so I'm not quite certain which of those comps will turn out the best for an eventual gladiator push, especially with the VUC coming up. So we don't know exactly how they will tune the classes coming with the AWC coming up. But for now, with the current game state, Affliction Warlocks will reign kings of the ladder. I have no doubt in my mind that that is going to be the case. I faced last night a couple warlocks that already had the foresight with doing PvE on the side, and I am quite certain that the damage is overtuned. So in that situation, we will need to adapt to the meta. If they nerf Affliction Warlocks, then more options will open up, and I'll keep you guys updated. So thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it if you leave a like and a sub to the channel. Whatever your goals may be this season, I wish you all the best of luck. I am certain that Restoration Druids this patch are in a much better position compared to Season 1. So I encourage you to try Druids out. Thank you very much for watching and goodbye.